Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience there as we were letting people into the meeting. It has been a long time coming here, but we're almost to the finish line of getting our kids back in school. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Joe Rumsey. I'm the superintendent of schools here at the Bath Central School District. And let me just start out by saying, just as I did the last two nights with our primary school and our middle school meeting, that we truly miss your kids. We really can't wait for the students to get back, and it's been a long haul. I know many of you have been, excuse me, many of you have been through much as we closed back on March 13th. It's been a whole spring of surviving this COVID crisis, and we're working toward getting our kids back. Unfortunately, it's also been a very long and cumbersome process as we go by the directions of the governor's office, by the New York State Department of Health, by the State Education Department, by the Department of Transportation. There's been all kinds of folks that are providing guidelines, many times contradicting each other. They require further clarifying documents, many attorneys' opinions, and a lot of dialogue with our neighboring schools to make sure we're doing things the right way. Please note that everything we do, safety is our first and most important priority, and that, you know, everybody has their own personal opinions about some of these requirements. I know I hate wearing a mask. I hate some of the things that are being required, but this is what we have to do to get students back. So there's a time for advocating for things, but there also is a time between 8 and 3 and during school times where these are the guidelines we have to abide by in order to make sure our students can be here. The governor required us to submit 3 plans, one for everyone returning, which is our ultimate goal, one with everyone remote like we were in the spring, but this one is a higher standard and a ramped up version where attendance is taken on remote days. And then a hybrid or a combination of the two with basically 50% capacity of students here. The district is trying to get all of our students back. However, based on the requirements, we are only able to do the hybrid where we can get 50% capacity based on all the social distancing requirements. So due to those restrictions, we have settled on the hybrid model to get people to start the year with. This is disruptive. It's probably the most disruptive model possible for our parents, for our students, for our teachers, daycares, employers. This is very difficult, but it's what we're able to do to get our kids here as soon as possible. We've had many stakeholder group meetings, where parents, teachers, staff, community members, board members, students involved in this. And the hybrid model we've chosen is an every other day process with 2 teams, a blue team and a white team, with students assigned to each team. These teams were based on families, based on bus routes, learning patterns, everything else. But more importantly, this type of hybrid model, the every other day, compared to some of our neighboring districts who've gone maybe 2 days on, 3 days off, week on, week off. We've picked this because it also solved many items such as meals being able to go home for the following day. Internet access inequities are actually better because now students can download and upload their work the next day. It removes students' long breaks, vacation breaks, and promotes more of a positive relationship between the student and the teacher. So not perfect, but health and safety is the first priority. And the first 3 weeks will be really focused on health and safety, social, emotional needs for students, as well as preparing for that remote learning. So if the governor says we have to go remote in a few weeks, we'll be able to do so. Tonight is going to be focused on the high school. Mr. Siebert will be leading the rest of the meeting. The protocols for tonight are basically, we will be asked that you email questions Mr. Siebert will give those directions. He's going to go through just about all the entire plan for the high school, which will be posted online, as well as later this week, you'll see a frequently asked questions document to summarize all 3 meetings and broken out by building. At the end, we'll continue to ask questions. If you after his presentation, if you would like to submit emails he'll give directions for that to Mr. Brzezinski. We'll continue to answer questions that way, and then afterwards we'll continue to answer questions for the rest as we receive them after the meeting. So with that, I'll turn it over to Principal Siebert to go over the high school plan, and then we'll answer questions afterwards.
Thanks, Mr. Rumsey. Appreciate you doing that. I'm going to, I have a high school reopening presentation I'm going to try to share with everybody. So all right, so let me. All right, so hoping everybody can see that screen. Can you guys nod if you can see that screen okay? Everybody can, I'm just looking at some nods so that some of you. So just basically just to welcome, and I have about probably 10 or 12 slides to kind of go through with you guys to kind of talk a little bit about the, the reopening plan and what we're looking at. And just kind of get started with that here. So, as Mr. Rumsey was leaning towards or talking about a second ago, any questions during the presentation? Mr. Brzezinski's in a room off to the side here. You can email him, send him an email at rbrzezinski@basscsd.org. He'll try to get them to me, and I'll try to answer them at the end of the presentation. I think Mr. Rumsey is probably going to come on at the end, and that'll give me a chance to look at it, look at some of those questions that I might be able to answer, before we get off the Zoom tonight. So Mr. Rumsey talked about it for a second. Just want to kind of talk a little bit about the blue and white team designations. Your students should have by this time, they should have their schedules that'll denote whether they're on a blue team or a white team. Quite a long process involved with it. It had a lot to do with transportation, and it had a lot to do with the family focus and making sure that we're keeping families together and people are living in the same households together. It's tough enough as it is doing a hybrid like this. We wanted to make sure that families were able to stay together in terms of teaming. But all the while you're doing that, you also have to keep track of class size and how many kids are going to be here on each day. So we had a lot of limitations in terms of what we could do. And at this point, we're in a situation where we cannot make changes unless it is a specific family situation or a busing issue. Those are the ones that we're looking at in terms of making changes for. And I know sometimes it's not I know that, especially I know in high school, middle school too, but certainly in high school, if your friends are on one team and you're on another team, I know that's not an easy thing. I'm going to ask that people try to work their way through it. And we have, we have people we can talk to, and people are more than welcome to come in and talk with me and stuff like that. But we have those teams set up for a reason, and moving one person on one thing can really cause a big domino effect in other places. So I just wanted to touch base about the white team, blue team designations. Transportation, I'm not sure these were said in the other meetings or not, but just in order to maintain the social distancing piece, each bus, they've been assigned a seating for the eligible students. Students' riders are going to be picked up and dropped off at the same address. The flexible bus schedules that we've had in the past for transporting students aren't going to be as possible this year, at least to start off. All the different locations, so you are not going to be possible. So you need where they pick up and drop off will have to be the same location. It'll need to be permanent. It doesn't mean that you can't make outside arrangements if you need to, but if they're riding the bus, we can't move kids from one bus to the other and add kids and subtract kids. Wanted to share with you, here's what I would call, this is our modified block schedule in the high school. As you know, traditionally we have a 77-minute block. Maybe the ninth graders coming in don't know that, but rest of high school kids, we have a 71-minute block. You can see we start at 7:40 this year. That's because of the busing and the transportation. I'll get into some of this in a minute, but I just want to show the parents and students the block that we're looking at. So there's 71 minutes, which means we've kind of lost about 6 minutes, 7 minutes after each block. As you notice, you see block 1, block 2, block 3. Block 4 is 91 minutes this year. It's a lot longer than it was in the past. The reason it was longer is because I have 3 lunches here now. We have lunch A, B, and C. Kids will still get a 25-minute lunch, but I had to find a way to get an additional time in the cafeteria and additional lunch time, just for our spacing and being able to keep kids separated enough. Cafeteria is one of those areas where you have a ton of kids go all into one space. So we had to find a way, even going with half our students, that cafeteria, when you're trying to space people out, is not very easy to do. So we went to 3 lunches. If there's any questions about the lunch schedule, the kids should have that on their schedule at this point, what their lunch is. And again, I'm not moving lunches. That's just when we're going to have it, in terms of where the kids will be. And as you can see, block 5 has 71 minutes as well. So I just wanted to have you get a look at what the block schedule is like. So I'm going to run through a day with you. Basically, my plan is to, not take a ton of time, but I want to run through a basic day and what it kind of looks like the best we can. Understanding that everything that we're talking about can change. The whole idea here is, like, we haven't done this before, so this is all new to us. We're going to try some things, and then if it doesn't work, we may have to make some adjustments. Say, okay, this isn't working quite right. Let's make an adjustment and try this instead. We're just kind of going into it with the best understanding that we can, knowing that once the kids get here and once people get moving, we're not sure exactly, how it's going to pan out. So I basically told the staff, and I've told myself, I'm like, we just got to stay flexible and knowing that it's not going to be perfect, but we'll try to make the best of it that we can. So the doors are open. The doors were open, in the past, doors were open around 7 o'clock. Doors open now at 7:20 a.m. So I'd ask, you don't need to drop. Can't be dropping students off or worry about dropping them off at 7 o'clock or before that. 7:20 is when the doors will open. The bus students, walkers, parent drop-offs, student drivers, all those people, 7:20, the doors will open. Buses are going to let off like every few minutes. So what they'll do is they'll let students off, and then the kids will come in the door. We're going to have separate door for the bus students, because those students have already been checked. They have, at that point, they will have had, their temperature checked. They would have all those types of things taken care of when they got on the bus. The walkers, any parents dropping kids off, or any student drivers are going to come through another door where we will, there'll be the questions, and we'll check their check temperature and do those types of things for those kids. So luckily we have, about 5 or 6 doors here. So we'll have signs where the bus students will come in the one door, and we have the other students, the walkers dropped off, any students dropped off, and or student drivers, there's going to be a couple other doors. We'll have staff members there, checking kids in as they come in. It won't be quite as bad because, again, only have half the student population will be here at that time. So when they come in the doors, at that point, they can, students that choose to go to breakfast can go down to breakfast. We'll have space available down there up to a certain amount. In the past, not everybody's done breakfast, but we do have, quite a few kids. So they're going to have an option. It'll be a grab and go. So they're going to go in, they can grab breakfast. We'll have people down there to make sure they stay socially distanced. They can, they can talk to each other. They'll just be a little ways away from each other. And then if they don't want to do that, they certainly can grab their meal, and they can go right to first block class. Our first block class, as you see, starts at 7:40 a.m. So that'll start right at 7:40 a.m. Some students I know will probably still be eating a little bit. The teachers understand that. So students, as I said, will have an option to eat in the classroom as well. And matter of fact, if the cafeteria gets full, we're just going to send the kids right to first block. We're going to see how it goes. It'll take us a couple days to see how that all works out, but that's the plan at this point in terms of just the arrival piece. So class time. So now we're in class and we're talking about class time. Just the use of face covering when traveling through the hallways is going to be required. We're going to ask students to maintain 6 feet of distance when possible. And obviously when it's not possible, they're going to need to have their face coverings on. The way we have it, looking at 99.9% of our classrooms, we're going to be able to keep them 6 feet apart when they're seated at a desk because we have smaller numbers of kids. A class size that was normally of 20 is now 10. We can comfortably fit 10 kids in a classroom, which will allow students to be able to take off masks when seated at a desk. However, and I think this is important to say, students, need to follow the directions of the classroom teacher when it comes to using a face covering. If they're doing anything else, they may be asked to put their face mask back on or the face covering on, when they're doing any other types of activities or stuff in the class. But we will have an opportunity for kids to be able to have their masks off and be able to sit at their desk and comfortably sit there. When we're changing classes, there's another protocol that we put in. We're going to have students walk in a counterclockwise direction. So parents, over the next couple of weeks, you have to show your kids what counterclockwise is in terms of walking. But we actually will have signs up here, and we'll have information in terms of that. That way we have everybody kind of going in the same direction. It's only when we're changing classes or I have a lot of kids in the hallways, that is really the only thing. Obviously, if a kid has to go out to use the bathroom or has to come down to the office for something, has to do something, I'm not going to ask them to walk all the way around the school to come to a simple location. Obviously, at that point, they'll have to have their face covering on. But we're just doing it when we're changing classes, when their big groups are changing. We might be able to change that at some point, but right now we're just going to have them walk all in the same direction. So we'll have stairwells. We have up and down stairwells on each side. So we'll have the lobby here and the library stairwells will go up, and the other ones across the other side will go down. So we'll have all that information. And here's the thing, they're not going to get it right the first couple of days, so we'll just kind of remind them, and we'll get everybody going in the right direction and get that squared away. We also have the use of sanitizer. We're coming in and out of classrooms. We're asking students to be doing that. We'll be doing the same thing when they come into school. Lunchtime is a big time for students. As I said, we've added an additional lunchtime. Students will be able to eat in the cafeteria at spots designated for them to sit and eat. We'll also have areas blocked off, so they won't be able to sit right next to each other, but they'll be able to sit across from each other and down from each other. So if you have a friend that you're sitting and talking to, you can still sit there, just like we would in any conversation. They can sit 6 feet apart and have a conversation and sit there and eat their lunch. One of the other issues, and it's the reason that the lunch time is so long, is there's got to be about 8 minutes of time between lunches so the tables and chairs and those stumps can be cleaned and disinfected. They have the spray, and we have the ability to be able to spray. So as soon as kids leave, maintenance will come in, they will spray down. It'll be about 8 minutes before the next group comes in to the cafeteria. That'll give that time for that to be cleaned and for that to be disinfected, so we don't have any issues with that. As you can see on here, it has students. There are 3 different things students may have, and again, they'll see, it'll be on their schedule. They'll just follow their schedule. But it's either going to have advisement, lunch advisement, or it'll be a split one, which would be advisement, then they go to lunch, then they go back to advisement. So as I said, so students may start off with advisement the first hour, and then they have their lunch. They may start with lunch and then have advisement, or then someone will have advisement first, then they will go to lunch, and they have advisement again. Okay. End of the day, we're planning at this point on dismissing students alphabetically. Not sure exactly where we're going to cut the alphabet, like maybe A through D, just to avoid congestion in the hallways. So we'll send like A through D or A through E or whatever first, and we'll let them go, give them a minute or so to get to their locker, to get their stuff. They will be picking up lunch and breakfast for the next day, for the remote day, which I'll get to in a minute. But they will, so then the idea is for them to then, obviously at that point, they will leave the school. I know that it'll still be congested a little bit because kids will still be in the hallway, but I figured we'll wait a minute or two, we'll do the next set in the alphabet, and then we'll probably break it up into like 3 or 4. So over the course, we'll probably wait a minute and we'll see how that goes. So I'll excuse kids A through D, the next minute, E through G or whatever. So we'll see how that goes and see if we can keep kids from being too congested in the hallways. As I said, the idea then is there'll be a grab and go for them to head out when they head out to the buses or cars or whatever. They're pick up lunch and breakfast for the next day and the remote day when they head out. We ask that the kids leave school in a timely manner at this point. They can't be waiting around and hanging out in the hallways and stuff. There are no late buses at this point because obviously the younger kids have to go too, and the buses are assigned. So no student, we're not going to have any students staying after the first week. During the first week, we're not going to have anybody staying after. We're going to make some adjustments because obviously students need help and those types of things in the upcoming weeks. Students that are able to get in high school, it's a little easier. A lot of students can get their own transportation, have transportation, are able to work that out. So that's something we're going to look at. But we got to get through the first week of school first before we, start talking about, teachers keeping kids after for extra help and those types of things. So we'll have to talk about those procedures and that stuff afterwards. One of the biggest things they can do on their day here, especially in the end, is getting prepared for the remote learning the following day. It's going to be an important piece of this hybrid model and an important piece of what we're doing. So when they leave school, obviously they got their breakfast and lunch for the next day, and they should be planning for the remote day. One of the biggest things that we need for the remote day is there's an attendance requirement. We are going to have set up for the students, and they'll get that their first day that they're here. There's going to be a Google Doc that'll be right on their, it'll be on their laptop. They'll be able to pull it up. It's going to take them probably less than 10 seconds. They have to put their name in, their grade. They have to say, yes, I'm doing, I'm checking off that I'm doing remote today. But then there's also going to be comments for any comments, questions, concerns that they might have. We can then get to the teachers if they need it, as well. And again, so it's just name, grade. They're going to do a quick remote check-in. We ask that they have this done by 1 p.m. so that we can then enter, because we got stuff to do in terms of attendance. Students can check in with their teacher, Google Classroom, that type of thing, et cetera, during the day. Teachers will be available during the day to meet with students and touch base with students that are on the remote. I'm not requiring, so on the remote day, they're not going to be Zooming with their teachers. It's not like when we were doing the full remote before. On the remote day, they're not going to be Zooming with their teachers because the teachers are in class at that point. So we're not requiring kids to Zoom with their teachers and to be connected with the classroom. They're going to have activities and work and things that they can do that are going to support that learning, and vice versa. I mean, they're going to be doing things the next day when they come back to school, come back in person, that they will have done at home to help support that. One of the things that I've talked to the teachers about is we got to find that happy medium. There's got to be an accountability for students during that day of remote learning. We have to have accountability there, but I also don't want students sitting in front of a computer at home for 8 hours. I don't think that that's beneficial at all. So I've already talked to the teachers. I'll talk to them more about that. So those are going to be activities, and there's going to be things that the teachers are going to ask the kids to do. But we also got to keep that in perspective and not, especially early on. We really talked about early on about making sure that we're keeping those keeping those kids connected, but not overwhelmed. And I think that's going to be a big thing that I'm going to push with the teachers. So keep them connected, but don't overwhelm them. Just got to continue with the remote day of learning. Students without or with limited internet, because we do have that. We will have a staff member that they can check in with each day for remote learning. It might be by phone, text, etc. We need to figure out during the first week of school those students that have limited internet or that don't have internet at all. We're going to be working diligently to try to get those kids so that we can connect them with a teacher, so they have somebody that they will connect with each day. And that teacher then, or staff member would then, if the kid had questions or whatever, could then forward that stuff on and communicate that way. This works really, really well when everybody has the internet. It doesn't work so well, obviously, when people have limited internet use. Big thing for students, parents, is to, it's a good day to stay current with work and get ready for the next day of learning. It's not a free day off. And I think it's important for the teachers, it's important for parents to let the students know this is not a day off for you to go do whatever you want. You're going to have some responsibilities that day. It doesn't mean it's not going to be, it'll feel a little bit different than obviously being here in school, but it's still going to be an important day for the students. Obviously, on the first, I know this would come up, the white team students are not going to need to worry about this on September 8th. There's no way that they're going to be prepared to, they're not even going to be in school. Their first day is going to be September 9th as far as in school goes. So I don't have any expectation that the students on the white team are going to be trying to connect and doing all that stuff on the first day of school. We'll work our way into it. This is not a, this is not a sprint right now. We got a few days to get ourselves squared away. But students that don't connect in after a couple of days, we'll be reaching out and to you guys to say, hey, we need to get these kids connected on the remote day. Some general information for you. And I'm going to share this with staff big time. We must be prepared to go back to full remote if necessary. And this remote day is a good way to help us work through some of those types of things. So I think it's important for us to understand that we can go back to that at any time. So we want to be prepared. We want to be better prepared than we were in the spring when it literally hit us. We left and we didn't come back. The grading is going back to normal. All report card grades are a 100-point scale. Teachers will make adjustments based upon different things and based upon their own classroom as they usually do. But we are going back to the normal type of grading that we've always done. I guess it's important for you to know the school environment has changed, but we're still striving to make this a great year. We want this to be a great place to be. We want this to be a great place for your kids. I recognize that students are going to be frustrated with some things here. That concerns me because I don't want this place to feel, students always complain that, school's like jail, it's terrible. But I don't want it to be like that. And we're going to talk with the staff about making it as enjoyable as possible. I know that there's a lot of concerns about not having friends here and those types of things. But I think that we can work through it. And, I'm really positive about it. We have a great staff. They're really, and you can see in one of my bullets here, teachers are very excited to see the students. Even if they can't see them all at once, all the teachers are like, we can't wait till we get some of these kids back. They go, we're so looking forward to having kids in our classroom. So they're going to do whatever they can to make sure that, this works. And it's just about opening up that communication and, and talking. And we're going to want kids to tell us, to say, hey, if this isn't working or something they're struggling with, we need to know it too. Ninth graders, and we might have some ninth grade parents on here. I saw that we did. We are going to have a ninth grade orientation. We are going to put a presentation. We actually had a student one of our seniors walked around the building and kind of showed us some things and did a bunch of stuff. We're going to have a presentation, will be on our website. But what we're going to do is we're going to do 2-day open building for freshmen and new students. We're going to do it on the 31st and the 1st. I'm going to get that information out because I know for freshmen, it is super important that they at least know where their locker is, even though honestly, we're going to not use as much lockers this year. We don't need to use them as much. I'm going to allow you to use backpacks so you can carry things around so you don't have to go in your lockers all the time. But I know that it's good home base to be. It's a good place to have some of that stuff. Some people have big textbooks. So your lockers in classrooms. So on the 31st and the 1st, we're going to open up the building. I'm going to open it up. I'm doing it over 2 days. So we're doing I'm thinking I'm going to send out a robocall. You see here on my bullet, robocall to freshman parents next week with the details. But we're looking at probably like an 8 to 4 on Monday and like 8 to 6 on Tuesday. So it gives people a long time to come in. You have to check in the office first. And if there's too many people in the building, we may just have you wait until the other people get through. I'm hoping by spreading it out over 2 days for a long period of time that, freshmen will be able to get in here. But a robocall will be going out to freshmen and their parents for that. Because I know that coming to a new building, even though you guys were at the middle school, it's still a little overwhelming anyway. And we want to do something. So as I said, we have a presentation that's going to be in play. And then we're also, which is the big thing for you guys a lot of times, is like just finding out where your locker is. Really, locker room and your first block class is the big thing. Locker and first block class are the two big things that you're going to want to know when you first come. And then the teachers will get you all squared away. So that robocall is going out next week. Last thing I have is just a reminder, only the blue team on September 8th. The white team will be on September 9th. So, and I also have just the last thing is just, you can send me questions, at the end, if you have any questions, things that might not pop up tonight, but if things pop up, tomorrow or the next day, and you're like, hey, I hadn't thought of this, and you want to, send me an email or send me a email, just go ahead and do that. Okay. So I'm done with my piece at this point. I can turn it over to Mr. Rumsey. He always likes to have the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Siebert. So as you've heard, much planning has gone into this district-wide per the high school building. There's lots of planning involved with students clustered in cohorts with staggered transitions, hybrid days and remote days. We're at a higher standard, much online connectivity with teachers and activities, attendance taken. There's a huge focus on cleaning and disinfecting. For those of you who are aware, we have a Department of Health recommended, state ed recommended cleaning component that is basically a spray that disinfects in 3 minutes. So we'll be able to make transitions quickly and disinfect areas without having to wipe everything down. We can spray them, it dries there within 3 minutes and disinfecting. The other piece, there's a huge focus on social distancing, a huge focus on face coverings. That doesn't mean your student's going to wear a face covering all day. The classrooms are set up with the social distancing. Really, the face masks will come into play with whenever they're in the hallway, whenever they're on school buses, or whether they're in an activity that cannot maintain social distancing. So if your child comes home and says they have to wear their mask all day, that is not the case. We will be able to answer those questions. Screenings are going to be done by parents, but also at every bus stop. Our monitors will have thermometers. We'll be able to wipe down and disinfect the handrails, the seats. That'll be a big component. We understand that sometimes those thermometers the touchless thermometers are temperature sensitive. So if the day is cold or super hot, they're not getting accurate readings, we believe. That bus will be just held at the bus loop until the nurse can come out and take the temps as they're coming off. Screenings by students will be done. Those questions that you see when you go into different areas now, those students will have to do those a couple times a week. Teachers have to do them every day. The random temperature checks will happen also during the day, just to make sure there's no student that's become ill during the day. We understand this is going to be a process. It's going to be very messy. We're going to do our best, and it'll get better every day. But we know it's not foolproof. But as much planning has gone into this, we're feeling confident that we can do this very safely and get the students back in school. Some of you have asked, what happens if a student has symptoms? We have an isolation room in our nurse's office. The nurse Dixon will be overseeing the staff on how to handle that. They'll work with the parents, the student, your family care provider, Dr. Bramer, our school medical director, and the Department of Health on any, depending on what the symptoms are, what the protocols are for returning to school. Some will be just, if, for instance, they have a fever while they go to the doctor, they have a strep throat test, we know it's not COVID, they can return based on the doctor's orders. If they have a red eardrum, we know it's an ear infection for our little guys. It's basically the ruling out things, so we can rule out COVID, as well as the quarantine piece. If we know they're 72 hours without a fever, they can return. If they've been through a quarantine piece, they can return. If they have a negative COVID test, they can return. But that is not going to be anything that the school is going to order. That is per the Department of Health or the doctor. That can be done, and that'll be done on a volunteer basis unless the Department of Health tells you to do so. There'll be a flow chart with this as well that'll be posted online later this week. It's being developed by the county public health. I had a chance to review it today, and that'll help you with, if my child has this symptom, what happens next. Look for that online, and or you can call and request that to be sent to you. If a student gets sick, if they are diagnosed with COVID, this is important. We will be working with the Department of Health at that time. They will direct everything. This isn't something the school is going to do. The Department of Health will do our job as a school is to set up all of our record keeping to minimize the mixing of students with the clusters and the cohorts of students. It actually minimizes that exchange so they can do their tracing, their contact tracing easier and more effectively. The Department of Health probably would shut down that building for 1 to 5 days. The reason that being is there's typically a 24-hour waiting period, at which point the school would come in and do a deep clean and disinfect, but also allows that contact tracing. So depending on how simple it is, if it's just a first grade classroom where they're together all day long, it's easy. If it's a boyfriend, girlfriend in high school that have gone through all the classes and maybe had a lot of mixture of students, that makes it more complicated. If it's on a Friday, the deep clean can happen on Saturday, Sunday, potentially back in school on Monday. All of those things are going to be dictated by the Department of Health. But obviously, if you have questions and concerns, because that's a very important and serious topic, we'd be glad to answer those. I encourage you to look online in the next few days for our frequently asked questions document. As every question we get, every scenario we get, the principals will be updating it for their building specific procedure. And Mr. Brzezinski and I will be updating for the district-wide plan, which is online as well. It's a 55-page document. I encourage you to just glance through it. You can scroll and just click on the table of contents, and it'll take you to the area you want so we can make it as user-friendly as possible. Obviously, this is a serious matter, but more importantly, it's a matter of mental health too, and we need our students back. We can do this safely, and even though it's in a hybrid environment right now, I'm positive that we can do this where we can get our kids back sooner than later, depending on how the governor dictates the scenario. Understand that we're also in a very wide region, so our schools will be closed by region if the hospitals start filling up a little bit. Our region actually ranges from Steuben County to the Hudson Valley, so we could be at the mercy of, like, say, somebody in Binghamton. There's a little uptick there, and that could actually close us. That's why it's so important that right from the get-go, the students learn what to do on remote learning days. We're supposed to be able to move back and forth from the remote to the hybrid environment, eventually back to full. We're hoping that happens sooner than later.
Hey, Joe.
Throughout this region, oh, go ahead, Mr.
Rumsey. Mr. Rumsey, we did have a question. I had one question to come in about transportation. Just a question about, I have a place, spot on the bus. My kids do get transported. But, if the weather's really nice, can I walk and those types of things? While the weather's nice and stuff, are they able to do that? And, the biggest thing I think you do is the best thing to do for something like that is to get a hold of Mr. Ortiz, our transportation supervisor, and just kind of have a conversation with him. That way he's up with what your plan is and what your thoughts are. So I don't think it's one of those things where you're not required to ride the bus. On those nice days, you're more than welcome to have your kids walk. But I think communicating that with Mr. Ortiz will help him out an awful lot that's what you're doing. That'll just give them an idea of exactly who's going to be on the bus when. So the more that we can communicate with them, the better it is. So good question.
Yep, and it's a great question. And the key to that component is every student has an assigned seat so that we can maintain that social distancing, which is why we can't have the multiple drop-off points and or extra riders on buses for the time being, because we have to maintain that piece to get them to school. That doesn't mean you have to be there, it just means that extras can't come on the bus at this time. That's a great question. And as you can see, transportation has really been the tail that wags the dog. It's the one that's driving a lot of this, so we don't split up our families, and we don't split up our buses, and we can maintain that, getting everybody here safely. Any other questions, Mr. Siebert?
No, I didn't. No, that was it as far as what I hadn't already answered. I will say to parents, I know that on the back of the report card, on the back of the schedule that you have, that your child has, it does have the hybrid schedule in terms of blue day, white day, and that type of thing. So we, in terms of when they're coming. Just also not to confuse everybody, but we in the high school we run a 4-day schedule. So because we're going blue one day and white the next day, it'll be blue day 1, white day 1, then we go to day 2, blue day 2, white day 2. We do that all the way through day 4. So we will actually have about 8 days before we run through our first full cycle of days 1, 2, 3, and 4. So your kids will figure it out. It'll be pretty easy to do, but it definitely we'll remind them every day what their day is. So not a problem.
A common question is about music and sports. We're at the mercy waiting for sports. Athletics can tentatively start September 21st, but obviously that's up in the air right now and won't be decided by us. That'll be decided by the state. Additionally, music you've heard the 6-foot rule for social distancing. They actually have a 12-foot rule. We recognize that students, sports are so important for students. It's a complete education. The arts are, music is. We're going to maintain that. That means it might not be a concert in the fall, but there'll be a lot of lesson planning. And Mr. Siebert has worked it out so that the band can work together in smaller groups in the gymnasium where they can spread out. If it's nice, they can go outside. So those things are going to continue, but they'll be more on a lesson focus, a music talent focus where they're learning. And then that culminating project of the concerts, that might be on hold for the near future until we get less restrictions from the state.
We did have a quick question about sports for the school year. And at this point, I think September 21st was the line that we were at. And again, at this point, we're just waiting for further information. So right now there's been no decision made upon any of the fall sports other than the September 21st, nothing before then. So then we'll just have to wait to see what comes from there.
Yes, they're making decisions even about off-season programs, things such as that no schools can do that. And if anything they can do, it's programmatic outside, nothing inside at all. So we're bound by these restrictions. And those are the things that I need everybody to understand. We're going to make it happen. We may be getting restrictions that make it more difficult to get through the day, and school is going to look very different. But I need to assure you that this is temporary. We've been the quality school, the school that everybody looks upon in this whole region for many years, and nothing is different right now. Haverling is going to shine through this. It's just a matter of patience, understanding, knowing we're going to do what we need for all of us to stay together, and we're going to get back together soon. So it's going to be hard on all of us. Parents, this every other day is tough on work schedules. It's tough on students. It's less than ideal. I was struggling with this environment because of the disruptiveness of it, but we can get through this and know that it is temporary. Mr. Siebert, any other questions before we end the program?
I think we're all set for right now.
Okay, I encourage you all, send emails with questions to Mr. Siebert.
Definitely.
To me for district-wide materials. Look for the FAQ document online. Call the office. We'll get back to you. I have a 24-hour rule getting back to parents. We'll get back to you within 24 hours, even if it's an I don't know, so we can find out that. Many times it isn't, I don't know, because we're looking for guidance from the state on different things. We look forward to everybody being back though in September. And we know that this is going to be successful, and sooner than later, we're going to be back together as normal. So thank you for your time this evening, and please call with any questions or concerns. Have a good night.